Hi, my name is Christina Mena, and I'm a licensed mental health counselor for the state of Florida. Last week, I created a quick video blog just talking about what to expect when you start therapy. So, on top of building rapport and getting to know you, we are also looking at very important domains that have an influence over the stressors that bring you to therapy. Okay. And really, it was focused on knowing what to expect and understanding the importance of being as honest as you can during those first few sessions. Okay. So, today I'm going to talk about the next step, which is what we do once we've gotten very comfortable with each other after a few sessions of building rapport and getting the very important information. We can start to identify patterns. Patterns are very important because it helps us understand what you are also doing to further perpetuate some of the stress that you're experiencing, or maybe make it a little bit harder to work with, or maybe how it can contribute to a stressful dynamic that you have with somebody in your environment. Okay. Please note that when I say, how you contribute to this, I'm not saying that you are making up the stressors. Okay. Environmental stressors that are out of our control are very real, but our pattern and our history is going to have an effect on how we navigate those stressors. Okay. So when we first start to kind of gently push our clients and gently challenge them on these stressors or these patterns of stressors, we may get a variety of responses. Okay. If we have a client who started therapy, is very receptive, is very self-aware, and we bring up a pattern that they have, we may say, hey, did you notice that you have a tendency to go and do X, Y, Z? They may not love hearing it, but they may say, you know what, you're absolutely right. I'm fully aware of the stressor. I know it's part of my life, and that's why I'm here. I want to start changing it. Sometimes you have clients who are very receptive to therapy. They want to be in therapy, but they've simply never noticed those patterns, or nobody has brought it up to them. So now, because they're receptive, they're leaving the therapy session with completely new information that they did not have before. Now they have more information about how they interact with the world and how their patterns also affect others around them. Maybe they're not quite ready to make the changes yet because that's coming up next, but they're more aware, and that already makes a huge impact in how you carry yourself in the world. Sometimes we also get clients who really want to do therapy, but for whatever the reason, they're simply not ready to hear about their patterns. It's too painful to acknowledge it sometimes. It can also, maybe they do acknowledge it, but maybe they don't have the support system in place or the resources to be able to actually acknowledge it and do something about it. So this is where we have that customized approach, right? So if we know we reached a certain point, but for whatever the reason we can't move forward, then that's okay. We just go back to the drawing board and we get a better understanding of what those obstacles are so that we can continue to navigate this with you. During this time, we're going to identify the pattern, we're going to gently challenge, and we're also going to ask you, if you're ready, to start making very small, minor changes and just notice what the result is like. And this will help you to start practicing what it's like to make slightly different actions, to take slightly different actions, or to start sort of slightly differently changing how you think about certain situations. It's a very gradual approach because, as you can imagine, it could be a little bit of a shock to just be a very different person from one day to the next. So it's a very gradual approach when we take a traditional psychotherapy model. Throughout this process, we're also checking in with you about creating treatment goals. If you use insurance for therapy, this is essential because most insurance companies require that you have a treatment plan in place with your therapist. It's part of the documentation that they need, okay? Even if you do not use insurance, it's still very helpful to have some goals in mind, because if you have some goals in mind, then you also know what to expect when you enter your therapy session, and your therapist can also take the fluidity of conversation that occurs during therapy and keep that goal on the back burner. They can also say, hey, how does this thing that you're talking about now relate to this goal? How can we make that work for you? Similarly, goals are not set in stone. So if you created goals with your therapist and as you move forward, you realize, actually, I'm not ready for those goals yet, or I actually really disagree with those. I don't think that's the right way to go. Then again, that's okay. It doesn't mean it's the end of therapy. It just means we go back to the drawing board and figure out what to do next. Okay. Lastly, something that we pepper in as much as we can throughout this process is to educate. So provide healthcare education, and also to normalize. So to normalize your experience. This is very important because most of the time when we have clients come in, they have not yet been heard. They haven't been able to tell their story fully, or they received judgment or criticism from others. And because of that, they can feel very isolated. They can feel like this thing that I'm experiencing hasn't happened to anybody else, right? This thing that I'm experiencing is my fault. It's very typical to isolate and feel kind of distanced from others when we feel that our problem is not solvable or that there's no solution. Rest assured, what we do day in and day out is therapy. Most of the things you're bringing in, we've probably seen hundreds of times throughout the course of a few weeks, a few months. It's very similar patterns day in and day out for us. I say that not to minimize the client experience, but to remind you that it's part of being a human being. Okay. Unfortunately, just because so many things are stigmatized sometimes, or we may not get the type of support that we need or want, then it can be very isolating. But by us normalizing it for you and continuing to provide you healthcare education throughout this process, it can also remind you that you are not the only one and that there are solutions that we're going to work on. So that is it for today. Again, today's focus was just kind of understanding that next phase of identifying patterns and starting to sort of challenge and collaborate on treatment goals. And for next week, I'll do some more, I'll take some more information about interventions and methods. A lot of social media has now opened up knowledge on some of these things. However, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. So I'll talk some more about why certain interventions are used for some clients and not for others, and how we continue to customize that for you. So that is it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in on this topic, and we will bring up a new one for the next phase of therapy next week. Thank you.